Good evening and welcome back to the Hearthstone Half Hour. It has been a while, sorry about that. I'm Hammy from Velcroft.org and sorry that it's been a little while since we've been on air. It has gone a little bit nuts, in and out of work, lots and lots of evening things going on, so thank you very much for your patience. Tonight, what are we going to be up to? We're going to be jumping in. It's not a Monday, so it's not going to be New Player Monday, but we will be jumping into a New Player Night as it's Tuesday instead, and continuing the series that has been quite asked for by you folks. Thank you very much for commenting and letting us know what you'd like. We're going to be jumping straight in and looking at this week the Druid Deck, how we can break it down, deck list it up, and then play a game to get your heads around it and see a bit what it looks like for us folks. So without further ado, I'm hoping very much so that we can jump into game. So the Druid Deck, we've had a look at Warlock Giants recently, we've had a look at Hunter Rush recently, both have been sort of a bit up, a bit down in the current metagame. Now what we're going to do is jump in and have a look at the Druid. We've had a look at the Druid in one of our previous episodes, more from an arena perspective. What does the Druid do? What kind of Druid deck can I build? So I'm going to get rid of my custom Druid to start with, and we will create a new Druid, going through our choices as we go. So for you new players, new to intermediate players, maybe it will give you a slightly different Druid perspective. For you more advanced players, maybe this will give you a deck list that you can go and give a go. So going back to our Hearthstone Know Your Enemy rules. We started this series. You may know a Chinese ancient general called Sun Tzu, and one of his big things was knowing your enemy is like knowing yourself, and then it'll be a lot harder to be defeated. Sun Tzu probably had maybe a little bit less luck involved than a card game, but the concept stands pretty solid, and if you keep an eye on your enemy, if you know roughly how you play various cards, then you can play control-orientated decks. Whatever you come up against, you'll have some idea of what it's going to be looking like, and most importantly, how you can actually play against it and react to it appropriately. So let's take a look at a Druid deck. There are loads and loads of legendary decks out there. Druids can be a little bit heavy. Druids you can play as control, but what Druids have is a lovely bunch of stuff in their toolkit which lets you be really flexible. They've got buffs which can make minions terrifying in very short order. They've got some elements of control, they've got lots of direct damage. So Druid decks in some of the tournaments like Mana Grind and other things out there. Mana Grind is of course a sideboard format, meaning that you can between games tweak your deck a little bit. But Druids have been good. They're sort of seen as almost anti-meta. Like Druid at the moment, it's not been massively tweaked, massively buffed. It took people maybe a little bit of time to get a hang of it at the start, but because of its powerful tools and the way that it can work so well with some neutral minions, it comes in really good. So what we're going to do in this episode is build a quick Druid deck and take it into a game. We're going to explain some card choices as we go through this deck and roughly how we're going to try and play it. Now we're playing a Druid, so the first thing we're going to drop in is 2 Innovate. I don't want to right click on this card to take a close look. What I actually need to do is probably choose a deck to start with. That might be helpful. And let's call this the Hearthstone Half Hour Druid. Lovely. So first thing in this deck, 2 Innovate. Now why Innovate? If you have played Druid, you know this already. If you have not played Druid, then just look at it straight up. Innovate, brilliant card. One, you can rush out any of your 4 or 5 mana creatures early, particularly if you're playing no early drop cards. So if you're not playing anything that costs lots of mana in the early game, you save your Innovates and you can really accelerate your deck. Innovate is an example, along with card draw, of something in card games called deck acceleration. Anything that lets you draw more cards, play bigger cards more quickly, more expensive cards more quickly, get into your opponent more quickly. Innovate, a brilliant deck accelerator, and for that reason to make the grade. The next 2 things we're going to drop in, I can just spot them, is a bit of Wrath. Let's grab that. And I think we would probably also go for, I was thinking perhaps a bit of Claw. We'll definitely take 2 Wrath. Now the reason for Wrath, 2 mana, 3 damage to a minion and 1 damage and draw a card. You've got some really good versatility there. The 3 damage will let you keep the table clear in the early game, and for the 2 mana cost this is very important, particularly if you're not playing any early game minions to help you keep the table clear. And then the 1 damage and draw a card option, naturally if you want to pick off a 1 health minion, or a minion with only 1 health remaining, that additional draw of a card. Again, very much like Innovate, a deck accelerator. Lovely, lovely, lovely. But of course, if you can kill something with your hero alone, you want to save those cards in your hand. So we'll grab 2 Wrath for the moment, and we might come back to Claw for that reason, depending on other cards. Now, I would like to grab, I don't have the legendary, but a Tinkmaster Overspark. If I was going to grab that, it's a bit of a wild card, but basically that lets you spot remove something by effectively using a silence. And if you've not seen Tinkmaster Overspark, what he does is, on his battle cry, he transforms a minion into a 5/5 Devilsaur or a 1/1 Squirrel. Now, that sounds terrible at first thought, but if it's a tank, if it's a very big powerful minion, then transferring it into something a bit smaller probably isn't too bad. It's effectively like a silence, and at a cost of a random sort of removal as well. So Tink is useful for that reason. But what we will also could grab in here, maybe similar, is a big Game Hunter. Would do something kind of similar. Swipe, Starfall and Starfire. In terms of grabbing those, let's grab a couple of Starfall. Thinking of Skyfall, James Bond side, so Starfall. And what do we have there? A nuke. We can also grab a couple of Swipe. Where is my Swipe? This is where I look at my Druid and realise I'm not actually fully levelled it, so I cannot have Swipe. A bit of a shame. I should have fully levelled up before we jumped in this game, but Swipe is a key card. You deal 4 damage to an enemy and 1 damage to all enemies. I'm going to be missing Swipe, sadly, but you get that through your basic levelling up. Swipe, you really need, kind of like as your nuke, it lets you get problems off the table. Pretty key. 2 of them, of course, in Starfall and Starfire, possibly AoE, but you need those to get stuff off the table, DPS stuff down. So we've got the Starfall. Let's go and grab, if we can, a bit of Starfire as well. 5 damage and drawing a card. It will let us keep the table a little bit clearer. So we've got the Swipe, we've got the Starfall. We don't have to have the Starfire. I may grab the Starfire just because I do not, sadly, or I could alternatively use Claw. We'll leave those in there for the time being. All pretty good. I could have some cards, maybe like the Chillwind Yeti, maybe like Ogre Magi as well. They could be some good options too. Generally, because they cost 4, they drop out. They've got 4 attack. They've got relatively high health, and you can actually get some of those 4 minions out pretty early. In the absence of a lot of Druids run a very legendary deck, so I'm actually going to grab a couple of Chillwind Yetis for that reason. Ogre Magi could also be another option. Next up would probably be something like Azure Drake or Druid of the Claw. I'm going to see if I've got a couple of Druid of the Claws. Druid of the Claw, and we'll grab 2 of those into our Druid deck as well. So why are we picking neutral minions of Druid of the Claw? Again, 4 attack, so priests are going to have trouble. Remember, priest, if it's Shadowword Pain, 3 attack or less. Shadowword Death, 5 attack or more. If you sit in the middle like Druid of the Claw or Chillwind Yeti, then priests ain't going to be doing any removal to you with those cards. And it's so versatile as well. If you drop an Innovate on, say, let's say turn 2, turn 3, you can have a charge. You can charge in for that 4 attack, or you can get 2 additional health on the taunt, get you a tank up. You can cause some damage early on, or you can really pull out a tank with Druid of the Claw. And one of the themes of Druid cards, much versatility. Next up, what are we going to go for? A little bit of Nourish. And if we have a look at Nourish, what we could potentially drop this in for if we want it, just the versatility of it. 85%, 90% of the time, from the deck listing we're doing, it's on Hearthstone, I'll link you to it. You can draw 3 cards for 5 mana. Now, that sounds quite expensive, but generally when you look at some other cards, it's not actually too bad. Obviously, if you're a mage, you can draw 2 cards for a little bit less, but this is dropping a little bit later in the game, and if you really need to drop a late game minion or something like that, those 2 mana crystals could make a big difference. Jumping in, we want something that can charge in and do a bit of trading. Possibly be going for Argent Commander. Sadly, we don't have Cairn Bloodhoof, I don't think. If we do, I can drop him in, but a Cairn Bloodhoof is a legendary that would drop in here, and the reason for that again is because of the health and attack that it comes in with, and also the fact that when Ken gets knocked out, then you get Bane, his brother, spawning on top, so that's his sort of death cry and coming in for that kind of level. So in terms of another so solid neutral minion, I'll drop in 2 Argent Commanders for the time being. You may have noticed that we're going for more expensive minions because we know that with Innovate and with our deck accelerators we can get these more expensive minions out early. But again, Argent Commander, real solid card. We then want some late game bombs, some things that can drop some big late game pain. Ragnaros gets the nod if you've not seen Ragnaros in one of our drops before. Just a great finishing legendary. If you've managed to keep the board under control until the late game when Raggy comes out, 8 damage a turn to a random enemy, you've cleared all of their minions out, 8 damage a turn to the hero. You can cause some pain in buckets. Bit of Mark of the Wild, let's drop that in. Reason for this: Taunton 2/2, just for 2 mana, a ridiculously solid buff. If you've looked at all of our big minions that we've got, giving any of those taunt, additional attack, additional health, and the good thing is if you start with these 4 attack minions to get around priests, at the moment I'm picking quite anti-priest as it were, but you can then buff it when you know that their Shadow Word Pain's deaths are either off the table or it's not going to be a threat to you anymore. We've got to 19 out of 30 there in terms of a few cards. So what else can we drop in terms of additional pressure? Well, we can go generally. We want some card draw, so in the early game if we're going to put some pressure on, let's get some Loot Hoarder in. He will get things going. Without Swipe, we've actually gone for Starfire and Starfall instead, dropping in a little Healing Touch just as a situational card. Healing Touch, restoring them 8 health for 3 mana, ridiculous self-heal. 2 of those, you're really tanking it up as a Druid hero, but we're not going to do that for the time being. An interesting option here, we don't actually have the Sunwalker, but if I did have a Sunwalker, let's get into crafting mode. Taunt and Divine Shield, you can see that later in the game that not only gives you the trade, but if you buff that up it's a very potent late game force. So Sunwalker would have been a nice option here. We're going to drop in a couple of Harvest Golems for the death rattle of summoning that golem, and you can see again with our Druid buff cards we could buff up the Harvest Golem. With the death rattle we'll get another card in doing some damage, keep some pressure on very nicely. The Keeper, I would go for 2 of these if I had to, but again, notes that we can deal 2 damage or silence a minion, so he's got that nice little battle cry. He does have a slightly lower attack, but then with our Druid buffs we can scoop this one back up. Actually tempted to craft another one of him. We'll keep him at that level for now. Now, what else can we drop in? Well, we could go for the Faceless Manipulator, choosing a minion and becoming a copy of it. It's a tech card, but think of all of the dangerous minions there are out there. Dropping that Faceless Manipulator at the right time could copy a Ragnaros, Ysera, many things that could cause a bit of pain. Let us try and go for the Ancient. We don't have the Ancient of War, sadly, but again, if we had looked at the Ancient of Law, this one, the Ancient of War, the other, Taunt and +5 health or +5 attack, huge chunky late game minion. Really needs to buff my Druid deck so I can have access to some of these nasty later cards, and then also the Ancient of Law would have been a very nice option as well. Let's have a quick look at the Ancient of Law. So for the Ancient of Law, draw 2 cards or restore 5 health, so you can see between War and Law you're either doing a bit of buffing and healing or a little bit of offense with War, as the name would very much suggest. How much dust can I grab? What can I actually craft myself up at this moment in time? Can I grab myself a Law? No, I'm slightly low on the old dust front. Okay, so from our initial deck build we've got ourselves to about 26 out of 30. We have, as we've taken a look at a deck theme, gone through a few cards and tried to grab some stuff to put some pressure on. Some Druid decks are quite legendary heavy. If you look at the real laddering ones, some of them can be sort of 13,000 plus dust, but what you can do is make some pretty cheap and pretty effective. So I've made the biggest core I can, followed the deck list that I've been taking a look at as closely as possible. If you're copying a deck list and you're not massively familiar with a class, or you're trying to try something out, you always want to go with the theme as much as you possibly can, and then you alternate a little bit around that. So let's have a look at what I'm trying to achieve here. If we have a look at this deck list, what I'm trying to do is accelerate big minions out quicker, and to do that I have some card draw. I've got some smaller minions that I can buff to put some additional pressure on. I have all of the good Druid tools in terms of Mark of the World, in terms of buffing up. I've got some card draw and additional control in the form of Wrath, Healing Touch as a situational heal. Some of the stronger Druid cards I'm slightly missing, but we've got Nourish, we've got Starfall and Starfire, some later game control as well, Finisher and Ragnaros, and some Training Power and Argent Commander. So my goal with this deck is very much to keep the deck under control early game while accelerating out my chunkier mid-game minions, buffing those up, and then hopefully charging on in and wreaking some major havoc. Great stuff. It's as solid a plan as any, as with all good plans. It will probably go wrong at some point, but I'm 4 cards left that I still need to make up. So what options do I have? Claw is not a bad one. I can drop in some claws as a board clearer. So 2 attack and 2 armor will let me pick off those early game minions. I'm going to go ahead and jump in with some of those. To get rid of the big minions, I do have a big game hunter, so I'm going to jump in and use one of him. I could actually drop in 2 of him, but that would be some serious late game tech. I'm going to drop in 1 big game hunter just in case I need to take out some big minions in the later game. Other options that I could drop in, let's take a final look for that last card, and then I'll probably do a nice little rebalance. Druid wise, I'm not going to go with the mild growth. Power of the Wild, additional buffing could be quite good. Go with the theme. Mark of Nature, that's a tough one to think about or not to consider. Let us take a little bit of a ponder. It would actually go quite well in terms of really turboing up some of my minions. Savage Roar would be more swarm orientated, but I would be attacking more with my hero. I am actually going to go for Mark of Nature. I get a nice little buff in there as well. So we're going to be continuing the theme of buffing these early minions. The Faceless Manipulator I'm going to keep, and let us give that a go, a tentative little go, as our first shot at this Druid deck. So we've gone for something a bit more constructed. What is this going to let us do? We're going with the theme of charging on in and making sure that we get out some early cards, draw cards early in the game, we accelerate as much out as we can, and then we sweep and buff and really take some pain in mid-game with our stronger minions. So is this the perfect constructed Druid deck? No, not by a long shot. However, what it will do is let us take a good look at some of the real core essentials of how some of the higher performing Druid decks are playing. We've got a very good core of some of the key Druid cards here. Now you can see up to, I don't know, about 7, some of them you can almost go up to 8, 9 legendaries. A little bit of a challenge on the pocket for the casual player, but generally you can play and get those as well. We'll talk a little about the legendaries as we choose. I've got nothing I can play in the early game there. I'm going to trade all of those in as we wait for them to do a pick. Legendaries that are often included in Druid decks: Blood Mage Thalnos, that legendary 2 mana drop which basically gives you a free draw a card, Death Rattle. It's this Druid Priest smites me in the face for 2 damage, just because. It's an interesting call. I could claw him, 2 attack and 2 armor this go, but I'm just going to, at this point in time, other options. I can Mana Crystal, I don't have an Innovate. I'm going to accelerate into a card draw. Now I could have held on to that coin and further accelerated if I got an Innovate one of my 4 or 5 mana minions. That would have been a good play too. Blood Mage Thalnos, as we were saying, lets you draw a card, one of the legendaries that show up in Druid decks. Karn Bloodhoof, we've already discussed. Nat Pagal, at the end of your turn you have a 50% chance of drawing a card, again more card draw. Ragnaros and similar finishes. You will see Sylvanas Windrunner occasionally as well for the mind control ability and mid-game beatdown. Sylvanas is also a very good one to buff. Tinkmaster Overspark we've already discussed, and then also possibly even Ysera as another big late game finisher. They can really constitute the 7 or so legendaries before you even get into the rares. When my Loot Hoarder dies, he's going to be drawing a card, so that's a bit of a no-brainer for me. I'm going to trade that away and draw a card, and I'm going to drop yet another Loot Hoarder so I can continue picking my cards up, turboing my hand, hopefully getting an Innovate in hand, giving myself some nice options. And we've got a Fairy Dragon, which I can also trade away. It looks as though he's thinking of buffing it or similar. This guy at the moment is really just feeding me cards to kill, so there's nothing I really want to do that. if I can kill with my hero rather than a spell I would, but I can still kill with my minions. I don't have too much of a problem with doing that. So I'm just going to drop my Harvest Golem. I'm going to sacrifice my Loot Hoarder again and draw another card. And we can see I've got some Mark of the Wilds, 2 of those out now. I've got a Wrath, which means I can get my spell casting going. Some really, really nice options. And in terms of my early game goal of keeping my opponent's minions under control using the Druid particular buffs and cards, I'm doing pretty well there. I've had a very, very nice draw. I've got my Claw, I can attack with my hero. I've got a lot of different things I can be doing. Oh, and I've pulled an Innovate as well. All I need is a nice big chunky late game minion, and that would be really, really nice. 2 attack and 2 armor. I have some nice options here, and I can do some trading too. So I'm going to Shapeshift. The Shapeshift will let me pull away that single minion. Again, just focusing on keeping that table under control. I could have, also used a Wrath, but that's expensive, and in terms of priority I want to use my hero to trade with the armour rather than use the spells if I can at all. I'm actually just going to rock up with a final cheeky little Mark of the Wild buff, and not only do I have a 4 attack on 5 health tank there now, but he's also got the Death Rattle where he'll be summoning someone too, so I can now very much keep that pressure straight on and keep on going. Interesting. I've been mind visioned, so he's got a random copy of one of my cards. I don't actually have any minions, and they're all actually pretty druidy, so maybe he got nothing. Who knows? And then a pretty straightforward trade here. I could be 2 attacking and 2 armoring this turn with Claw. Slight little misplay there. Slight little misplay. What I'm actually going to do is 3 damage and 1 damage or draw a card. I'm just going to trade that away. That was a little bit of a misplay there. Probably what I should have been doing was just finding a way of removing that minion a little bit more cost effectively. The Wolf Rider charges on in, triggers my Death Rattle, and up comes my new Harvest Golem. So you're seeing a lot of the good old Harvest Golem at the moment. He drops into so many different decks. Smite takes out my minion, and the Priest is quite fairly warring back, trying to get some control. Now I have all the acceleration options in hand I want, but annoyance of annoyance, I am simply just not having the minions that I actually want to use to make this happen. However, I may as well keep on armouring up and keeping on smashing into him. If in doubt, push on. And that's very much what I can do here. What have we got? A drop Devil Saw, a buff with the raid leader. He doesn't have charge, he's got additional health, and he's really rocking on out there to cause me some pain. So what options do I have in hand? Well, I've got an instant trade with my Argent Commander, which is lovely to see. And I can actually do a double trade here to clear the table. So with the bubble, Argent Commander generally always leaves your hard card ahead. 2 attack and 2 armor for this turn means that I can get the 2 attack to kill the raid leader and stay with my armor intact. Lovely. So it's nice to see that even though we've not been able to take quite all of the cards we wanted in terms of forming this deck list, we've been able to keep the core of the deck and its ideas going. Control minions as much as possible in the early game, try and accelerate out big minions. We've not actually been able to do, but the main reason for that is because I could have innovated there and saved another 2 mana. It would have been an option. I'm really struggling on picking the minions at this point in time. A little frustrating. Starfall is a nuke that will clear the table for me, so I'm liking a bit of that. And I actually have a combo whereupon I can not only Starfall, I think is worth doing. I'm going to do 5 damage and take out that healing minion. I'm going to put another 2 armor on and an attack which lets me drop that one down, and then it leaves my 4 health minion, 4 attack, 2 health minions still ready to roll. That Innovate I could use to accelerate something out, or I could actually even buff up this Argent Commander to make sure that he's not going to get removed. 4 health and Taunt, the Mark of Nature, perhaps slightly overkill. I'm really going to stake a claim in the ground. This is maybe a little bit superfluous, but there you go. I've now got a Taunting Argent Commander. Instead of his 2 health, he has a mighty 6. Lovely stuff. What can our priest come up with? Razorfen Hunter. Remember, we're playing in casual mode, so we could be playing literally any experience, any level of ability. Don't judge your opponent's deck too much in casual. He might play someone with a whole host of golds and a whole host of legendaries, or he might play someone very, very new to the game. And both of those are absolutely cool. What we're focusing on is learning our deck and learning how it plays. So in this situation, I can still keep that sign under control. I have some options. I'm actually going to go ahead and trade away, beg pardon, the Razorfen Hunter with my Argent Commander, and then I can show you the use of Wrath. In this situation, I can grab an extra card and do the 1 damage to draw that card as well. And there is the Chillwind Yeti. There he is. How late in the turn he has shown up. There's nothing really for me to massively accelerate into at this point. I'm really just buffing up my minions. We can see Chillwind Yeti, Mark of the Wilded from 4-5 suddenly to 6-7. I have therefore put that Chillwind Yeti within range of Shadow of Death if he is playing it. And Nightblade, and a lot of these cards we see in the basic priest deck. I'm pretty sure that he is in the basic priest deck when you first start going, or one of the basic minions you first start with as well. The heals keep on coming in, but by this stage we're pretty in control of affairs, which is good. 5 damage and drawing a card, sounds good. Starfire is slightly expensive, but we'll use that to nuke our opponent down. What can we go for? Nourishing, gaining mana crystals or drawing 3 cards. 2 mana crystals, again maybe slightly excessive, but I'm going to innovate into a nourish. We'll grab that in. Keeper of the Grove, Druid of the Claw, Faceless Manipulator, and now we see where all of those big minions that I was looking for in the early game to accelerate have actually gone. Turns out, luck of the draw, I've got them at the bottom of my deck on this occasion. A little bit of a bummer. And there goes the Shadow of Death, and playing against the priest, we should have thought that really we were putting ourselves in danger. There goes the Higgling Touch he's nicked from us. Lucky him, we now know what his mind vision earlier went on. He is keeping himself in the game. I'm going to hold on to my Starfall. I don't want to copy a minion. I don't want to do 2 damage or silence a minion, so I'm just going to charge in with my Catform Druid, smash in with a little bit more damage, and just generally keep some pressure going. I might even armour up as well and attack for 1 more. So by this stage of the game, I'm not going to count my chickens before they've hatched, but it very much feels as though we're on top and looking good to come in and push through just for that final victory. We've managed to, using spells and attacking with our hero in terms of, ouch, a Holy Nova. Can he follow that up? He's going to heal himself for some more. We managed to keep as much control as possible for the time being. I'm now actually going to... There's not huge offensive options we have on the deck. I don't really want to Faceless Manipulator. I could Starfall, but Starfall will only do stuff to minions, so I'm going to use Nourish and draw 3 cards. See what we can grab. Starfire, another Druid of the Claw, another Argent Commander, and nicely this gives us some more offensive options to drop the pressure on this priest. Would get him down to 10 health. So to quickly recap, when our opponent takes his turn, in the early game we managed to use our druids to initiate some trades. We managed to use various druid spells, and luckily our early card drawing minions to get our hand nice and full in the early game and push forward. In the mid game finally we managed to, and there goes the very honourable surrender from our opponent. In the mid game we managed to keep that pressure on and control on with some more druid spells, again use our druid to trade using the various druid buffs, and then we finally managed to get out our slightly bigger chunky minions later game for the win. We would have preferred to accelerate those, but we just didn't draw them. They just did not show up, but such is the versatility, and there's Swipe, just what I wanted to drop it into my deck that we'll go in for next time. So in the late game we actually managed to come through and use those minions, but ideally we would have had them early to mid game, accelerated them out with Innovate. We actually had a coin that we could have used too. To quickly wrap up, as that half hour is upon us, it was a little bit quick, so apologies for that, but we would very much like to revisit the Druid. I think maybe a different deck format with some more cards, maybe look at a legendary version in the later game. So thank you very much for tuning into that Know Your Enemy Druid Deck and Druid Ladder Deck Breakdown, where we take a quick look at just what the Druid can do, a more constructed format away from the arena that we've done before, what kind of tools the Druid has at its disposal, and then we just play a game as it. So don't be afraid of trying out new heroes. I'll put the deck list that I was attempting to, both the deck list that we've used here and the deck list that we were attempting to take a look at, or try and deck list from as much as possible, but go and deck list as much as you can, but learn the deck, play it in casual mode, please, 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 so you're not running into a trap, as Admiral Akbar would say. You really, really, really can lead yourself into a trap if you don't understand the deck. Copy it blindly and play it in competitive and wonder why you lose when you're not quite sure what cards you should be playing and why. Thanks very much for tuning in. We are, after some busy times, very much looking forward to getting back streaming. So as a sign-off, I've been Hammy. This has been the Hearthstone half hour. We're trying to go out. Our aim is 4 or 5 nights a week. At the moment, we're trying to go for 3, but this is a pretty much, let's say at the moment, 3 or 4 night a week show where we try and cover different aspects of Hearthstone. We cover new player concepts, deck breakdowns. We then play ladder nights where we do a bit of 0 to hero and laddering. Hopefully we can get up to legend. We take a look at arena also, and then we go and just play for some fun. But Hearthstone is your stuff, and we also cover some other games. Where can you find us? Twitter.com/Felcroftcasts. Please, please, please tweet us stuff you'd like to see in the show, things you think we did well, things you think we can do better. We love feedback. It just helps us make better content for you guys. If you want to watch us live, these are always streamed on twitch.tv/Felcroftcast. youtube.com/Felcroftcasts. You can find our whole archives there, loads and loads of YouTube videos, other games as well, League of Legends, StarCraft, even the Banner Saga, a bunch of PC games and some other things, and look forward to some console games soon. We'll very much enjoy that. And last but not least, the website is felcroft.org. You can find all of our videos and a bunch of articles, written blogs accompanying those videos if you're at work or somewhere where you can't listen to sound. And last but not least, loads of static content. So we're going to get deck lists up there that we've been referring to, card guides and other things that, let's face it, a deck list isn't going to be the most interesting thing to watch a video on. But if we write it on the site, then it is all there and all good. Thank you very, very much for tuning in. I've just seen a couple of people just join in. We're just wrapping up this episode now, but watch it on the archive on Twitch or head over to youtube.com/Felcroftcast. You'll be able to see it there. Thanks very much for tuning in.